Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with another store visit, although it's a store that I visited several times before. In fact, I've visited the store hundreds of times before I had a YouTube channel because it's my LCS, which is a little bit of a misnomer because I've moved away, so they're actually not local to me anymore. There's probably a half dozen comic stores closer than this one, maybe a dozen. But I still have my pull list there, so on the rare occasions I can get to Worcester to That's Entertainment, I always stop by there to get my pull list, but also to check out the back issues. So I did get quite a few things this time, and I thought I'd just show you the haul. We're going to start with the new stuff. I got a couple back issues here that relate to some stuff I was talking about in the last video. My search for the ghost comic shops of Fredericksburg. But let's start with the new stuff. So, Alter Ego. I got 3 issues of Alter Ego. We got 182, which is about Uncle Marvel and the Fawcett family. I am a fan of Mary Marvel. I have to say I don't really care too much about the FCA, the Fawcett Collectors of America. I mean, I appreciate what they're doing, but I just don't care about Captain Marvel stuff. And so whenever they have an issue that's dedicated to it, I'm kind of like, oh man, it's $11 for this. But I'm sure it'll be interesting reading. 183, which is the spotlighting Irv Novick. So I'm definitely interested in reading this. It says, in particular, it does talk on the cover about how he worked on some of DC's most memorable war comics. I'm wondering if they'll talk about the stuff with Roy Lichtenstein because Irv Novick was one of his primary victims. And then we have something that I'm really interested in diving into. 184 is all about Tom Palmer, who just recently passed away. And as an Avengers fan in particular, Tom Palmer sort of provided the look for Avengers for decades, like a long time. So I'm excited to dive into that one. I will say, like with Alter Ego, it's a great magazine. It's a great resource. I always learn lots of interesting things about comics history when I read them. They're pretty dense read, and what I'm finding is that when I used to be able to get to the comic store like once a month, and so I was getting one Alter Ego at a time, it was great to sit down and read them and spend an hour or whatever going through them. When I go to the comic store and there's 3 issues of Alter Ego, I start to feel like, man, that's a little too much. And last time I went, I had been so long that I think there are 5 issues of Alter Ego. And there's so much material that I don't think I ever even have read the previous 5. So I've got a huge stack of Alter Egos sort of building up, which is a very expensive habit to have. At some point, I'm going to dig into these because there's so much great stuff in them, and I do love the series, but it's kind of overwhelming just getting so much of it at once. So I'm going to try and break it down into bite-sized chunks, pick those up. Another thing I got here, which is interesting, is Unnatural Order #1 from Vault Comics. Right? What is interesting about this is, now it's got a price on the back, $4.99, but actually this was free. And I've been hearing about this where Vault's basically trying to make a splash here. They're trying to get a new readership, right? And so what they did is they ordered like 160,000 copies or something like this and sent it out to all the comic book stores in the country for free. And so the idea is they're basically spending a lot of money doing this in the hopes that it'll catch enough readers for issue 2 that they'll have a big reader base going into it. It's a real high stakes gamble, especially for a small company, a smaller publisher like Vault. So I'm really curious how it goes on a business standpoint. I'm also curious about the comic. I haven't read it yet. Some kind of horror fantasy or something by the looks of it. but I'm going to check it out later. But when I saw they had some of the free copies there, I had to pick one up just to sort of see what it's all about, right? Last video I mentioned that I had finally gotten around to reading Love Everlasting #1 and discovered that actually it's a comic I want to read because it's sort of breaking down and discussing the various romance comics tropes, right? But I don't want to get the trades because I'm not a trade guy. So when I was at the comic store, I went to see if they had any individual back issues, and they did have a couple copies of issue 2 left. So since I have issue 1, I decided to just buy issue 2 so I can keep reading it to see if it's something that I want to get all 10 issues to date on or not. So here is Love Everlasting #2. Haven't read any of these yet, actually, with the exception of the next ones I'm going to show you, which I was super excited to get. Now, when I was down in Virginia trying to find these ghost stores, when I was in one of them, and they had Usagi Yojimbo #2 from the new Dark Horse series, which was a real surprise to me because I didn't know that series had even started. I remember like last year last year when it was announced the series was coming out, that Stan Sakai was moving Usagi from IDW back to Dark Horse, but then he was doing some other stuff. He had like this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover series he was doing, and so everything was on a hiatus. I've asked a few different times in different places, like, hey, when's this coming out? Nobody ever knows. And then all of a sudden it's there. It's at the store. So this is the only comic on my pull list for the last several years. So they did have it. And here I'll show you issues 1 and 2. They're doing some interesting things with the series, so I want to talk about that. Here's issue 1 of the new series, and issue 2 of the new series. Now, there's a couple interesting things here. First of all, this says Usagi Yojimbo Ice and Snow, part 1 of 5, and then in parentheses, it says UY #270. So I find this interesting on a few levels. This is something that Dark Horse actually started doing right at the end of the previous series. They got up to about issue 162, I want to say, 65 maybe, 165 with the regular numbering, and then the last arc of the previous Dark Horse run, there was no number on the cover. What they did was they had the logo, and then they had the name of the arc with part 1 of 7, because that was a 7-part arc. But if you looked on the inside front cover, it had the legacy numbering and the series numbering. So I'm pretty sure it had both. Definitely had the legacy, so it was from the first issue back in '86 up to present. What they're doing here is interesting because there's no regular number. It doesn't say issue 1 of the new series. It just has part 1 of 5 of this story. But then they are putting on the cover in these little parentheses that it's Usagi Yojimbo #270. I find it a little odd that it's in the parentheses. I don't really see what the purpose of that is. It just feels weird. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, but they're stepping on the cake, right? So it's like, I would prefer it if it either just said issue 1 and then the legacy number was inside. If it just said Ice and Snow part 1 of 5 and there was no number on the cover and it was just on the inside. Or if they're gonna put it on the cover, just put it on the cover. You know, why not have it say 270? Because it says 270 anyway. So I mean, I appreciate that they have the legacy number on the cover, but I don't really understand the design, the graphic design, why the little UY 270 in parentheses. It just feels weird. Other thing that's interesting about these, I'm not quite sure why this is the case, but both of these issues, these are the regular covers. There are variant covers by other artists, but these are the regular Stan Sakai covers. They're both homage covers. So this is an homage to the first issue of the original Dark Horse series. So this is an homage to Dark Horse #1, which actually at the time was supposed to be a limited series, so it said 1 of 3 on the cover. So there's all sorts of numbering weirdness with the Usagi Yojimbo. But this is an homage to that cover. The original version doesn't have his nephew or whatever, cousin, whatever this character is, but it's basically Usagi in the same stance, the stairs, the same coloring. So it's a clear homage. Whereas this one, of course, is an homage to the cover of Albedo #2, the first appearance of Usagi Yojimbo, only it's his arch enemy, the demonic J, instead. Now, of course, J is in this issue. I'm not 100% sure, like, why these choices to do these homages and why these particular homages. He's done homages before to this cover, but usually it's like a special occasion, like it's a 30th anniversary issue or something like that. This is just, it's issue 2, so and it's issue 271 overall. So not really sure I understand that either, but they're really cool. I'm just trying to figure out like what the thought process is behind some of these decisions, because they're a little bit odd. Odd's not the right word. They're unusual. They're not what I would expect from the series based on all of the complete run that I have of the series. So anyway, so exciting to have it back though. I'm not a big fan of Jay, as I've talked about before, but it's great to have the series back. So I'm excited for that. Now I mentioned that this is the only comic on my pull list, which is kind of crazy because for so many years I had 30 comics or 20 comics, and then it eventually became just a handful. And for one reason or another, they got canceled. The series ended, and so for a while now, I had the whole Archie line on my pull list all canceled. And then for a while it was just Usagi Yojimbo and Squirrel Girl, and then that series ended. So for several years it's been just Usagi Yojimbo, but I did add something today to my pull list. The first time in years that I've added something. And what I added was Santos Sisters, because when I was looking through the shelves in the back, I found the Santos Sisters Halloween special. Of course, it's designed to look like an old Archie comic. The art inside is all done in the Archie style, but the stories are all like humorous, tongue-in-cheek, sort of satirical. And I've read one issue of Santos Sisters, which is issue 3, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun and funny, and I love, of course, the styling and the artwork and everything. And I love the way it, I love doing homage covers myself, and when I do them, I want the graphic design to look as close as possible to the original. So I just love everything about this. So put Santos Sisters on my pull list. I still have to track down the issues that I'm missing, but it was really cool. And then finally, I did get a couple back issues. I wasn't planning on it. There was something in particular I was looking for in the back issues, though. And when I went to look for it, they didn't have it. I won't get into what it was, but because it's potentially a gift for somebody, and I don't want them to see it. But it doesn't matter, they didn't have it. I was really surprised that they didn't have it, but they didn't. But as I was looking for it, in a different box, I happened to see Atlas Comics The Scorpion. Now, I talked about this last time. Remember, when I was at those comic stores in Virginia, one of them had like 10 unread copies of Scorpion #1 from 1975 Atlas Comics, and they were $30 each. Now, this copy is not as nice. It has a big crease on one corner. But also, it was $2.99. Now, they had nicer copies at the store. Again, this is not a difficult comic to find. At That's Entertainment, I think they had 4 copies. And the other ones were nicer. And the most expensive one was $7.99. Now, if you're going to get a nice copy of this, whatever that means, 8 or 8.5 or whatever, out of a random back issue bin, $8 is an appropriate price for this comic, not $30. But I couldn't remember if I had this already, and I decided to go ahead and buy it. because it was only $3, and they also had these Scorpion number 2 for $3, and for $1.50 it's Scorpion number 3. And it is interesting to see how by the end, the first issue, it's it's a Dominic Fortune, and it's gonna, which is the character is gonna be carried over into Marvel and changed to Dominic Fortune. Issue 3, it's some completely rando superhero, which they did with all of the Atlas books in just an absolute desperation, where they just abandoned the premise of all of their titles and turned them into superhero books, hoping that would save things, but it didn't. I've started to get in a little bit of an Atlas kick recently, just a little bit. I need to make a checklist. I was pretty sure I had one or more of these, but I couldn't remember, and I don't have a checklist made, so I went ahead and bought them. The upshot is I did have issue 1 already. I have another copy that I got out of a dollar bin. So what I'll probably do is either give one of these away the next time I do like a mystery box. This might be part of the mystery, or I might take the dollar copy that I got and put that in my dollar bin trading challenge, like books for a later date. Now, this comic came out 48 years ago, so if it was going to be worth something, it probably would have been worth something already. So I'm not sure there's any point in really keeping it longer. But I do have some stuff in my future dollar bin box, which are there for sets, right? So it's like by itself, it might only be a $5 book. But if I can get 3 or 4 other Atlas first issues in other dollar bins, put them together as a lot, then it might be worth having. So I might do that. I haven't decided. Who knows? But a couple more Atlas books checked off my checklist that I don't have, but it's cool to get them. So anyway, it was a pretty fun haul. I'm looking forward to reading these. I'm looking forward to diving into a couple of those alter egos. I'm looking forward to reading the Santos sisters and the Love Everlasting. So there's some cool stuff. It's weird to go to a comic book store for me now and buy stuff to read, because I've definitely gotten out of that habit. Most of my new reading comics are coming from Kickstarter these days, from indie creators. But these are interesting to me, so I'm going to give them a shot. So let me know what you think about all this. Comments down below, like, subscribe, whatever, all that stuff. And I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.